Welcome to another Mentor Minutes episode of the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. I've got a quick question for you as we kick things off today. I want you to check in. Are you high on life? Are you crushing it in your business? Are you feeling incredible? Or is your mind kicking the shit out of you today? In business, we all have those ups and downs. In fact, some days you literally are on the roller coaster. You have some breakthrough opportunity, and 5 minutes later, someone drops the ball and you're in a mental, emotional tizzy. Mental discipline, it really is discipline, because the mind will do all sorts of wacky stuff. Now, how do you develop mental discipline? See, everyone has different ideas of what that means. Do you believe that mental discipline means that you need to be happy all the time? Now, if you've listened to me for a while, you know I have my master's degree in metaphysical science. And I am an advocate for understanding how the laws of this universe work. We know that everything is energy. We know that everything is vibration. We understand that the law of attraction is a real phenomenon. It's a real natural law. It's not something you just turn on because you decide that you're going to create a vision board. It is something that is always operating 100% of the time. So, what happens when you're not high on life? What happens when you get discouraged? What happens when you bump up against your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, your limiting beliefs, and you drop into that low vibration? What does self-discipline mean in that situation? Because certainly when you're happy and things are going good, you're not concerned about your mental emotional self-discipline. When those things happen, there are processes that you can learn to do to work your way through those challenges with more ease and more grace. And mental discipline really is about keeping yourself in check. I saw someone post something yesterday on Facebook and then a follow-up to it again today. And it made me cringe. And most things I'm able to just brush off. But there was something about it that struck me as concerning. And this is something that we all do to varying degrees. And what I'm talking about here is being a whiny bitch, being a victim. Particular individual had tried to sell me a service for a very, very high ticket, and I just could not justify the price. The return on investment just didn't seem to add up with the price tag, and not just the financial return on investment. There was a substantial investment of energy and time as well. So seeing this individual posting, bashing business coaches that he'd invested in was interesting and certainly very telling of his state of consciousness. Now, I want you to just notice that when you have those upsets in your life and in your business, are you self-disciplined enough to do your inner work, to process it, to take responsibility, to put on your big boy or big girl pants and get the fuck over it? Do your inner work, learn from it, grow from it. Don't act like a victim all over social media, a contradictory ass, right? And we do this oftentimes in the privacy of our own mind. Now, in this example, this individual is doing it very openly, very overtly. But we do have a tendency to more often than not, do these things to ourself in our own mind. And real mental discipline is the ability to observe these things, the mindfulness to say, holy crap, what am I doing to myself here? This is not who I want to be. This is not the way the successful version of me thinks or acts or feels about this type of situation. Your willingness to release and let that go and to step into the self-image of the person, the successful person you choose to be, and your ability to do that over and over again throughout the day as a way of being. This is what I'm talking about when I say self-discipline. Mental, emotional self-respect. So I'd like for you to go back to that first initial question that I asked you. What type of day are you having? How are you feeling? Is your mind kicking the shit out of you? This is often a habit that we develop. The habit of thinking negative thoughts, feeling discouraged, feeling sorry for ourselves, going into our victim story. We have to pattern interrupt. So if you are familiar with NLP or you have any experience with coaching, oftentimes you will come across this terminology, this pattern interrupt. The mind is really good at just defaulting to its known reactions. If we don't like what the mind is doing, we have to interrupt that pattern. We have to break the habit. And again, we do that with mindfulness. So when you feel yourself slipping into those negative thoughts, those negative feelings, the being a victim, feeling sorry for yourself, projecting your issues out onto the rest of the world as though it's all their fault, you have to stop yourself. What can you do to interrupt that pattern? Now, I've never been through AA, but I've heard that they recommend you wear a rubber band, I believe it is, around your wrist. And whenever you catch yourself sort of defaulting to certain types of thoughts or feelings, you snap that rubber band. I'm not recommending that you necessarily wear a rubber band on your wrist, but I am asking you to really contemplate, what can I do when I witness myself going into my old patterns? What can I do to snap myself out of that? What can I do to catch myself and break that cycle? And it's perfectly natural for you to have negative emotions. We just don't want to get stuck there. We don't want to get stuck on that same old repetitive loop, the loop of doom. And if you are honest with yourself, every one of your challenges in life and in business, you've got that loop. The moment something doesn't go your way, or you feel like there's evidence to justify your negative limiting belief about yourself and your capabilities and your worthiness, you go into that loop. What ritual can you create for yourself that's going to snap you out of that, that's going to pattern interrupt it? Now, I have heard, and I love Bob Proctor. He is certainly inspirational. I got into him many, many, many years ago, well before I ever got into the personal development field. He would oftentimes say, cancel, 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 right? When you have a negative thought. And the purpose is not that the word cancel is going to eradicate the limiting belief. There's probably going to have to be some releasing and reprogramming there. But what can you say to yourself to jar yourself out of the subconscious, habitual, reactive tendency to go into that old negative pattern of thinking and feeling and behaving? Is there a word that you can say? Is there a mantra? Is there a physical action? Do you literally have to say, stop? Like, what can you do to pattern interrupt that tendency, that habit? That's the first step. Then you get really honest with yourself. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I believing about myself? What's going on here? Why do I feel this way? What do I believe about myself that is causing me to feel this way, to react this way, to respond this way, to behave this way? Then you're going to be open to listening to yourself to uncover what that deep-rooted, painful, self-limiting belief actually is. And there's going to be some negative emotion. There's going to be sadness or hurt, maybe feeling of unworthiness or unwanted. There might be some kind of fear there. And you're going to allow yourself to feel that feeling. Acknowledge it. It is what it is. I feel the way that I feel. I've got this old painful memory and it feels horrible. And I'm letting that feeling come up and I'm going to let it pass through. I'm going to allow it to flow through. So instead of trying to ignore it, instead of trying to avoid it, instead of trying to push it back down to wherever it came from, I'm going to allow it to be okay that I feel this, knowing that in my allowing it, it's going to flow through and I can release and I can let that go. Now, this may seem oversimplistic, and for some of our deeper rooted issues, it may be overly simplistic. It may only be a part of the process. Of course, there are so many incredible techniques that can help you to work with some of those deeper rooted subconscious patterns. Join me inside of the Business Mastery Academy. You're going to learn those processes. I'm going to guide you through those processes, releasing processes, EFT, hypnosis, guided affirmation journeys where we're actually releasing those old hurts, those old beliefs. But for the sake of today's episode, let's just keep it simple, okay? So here you are. You've identified this feeling. You're willing to express it. And when I say express it, I don't mean going and vomiting your negativity all over other people. I'm talking about allowing yourself to acknowledge that you really feel that way and letting the feelings come up and letting them pass through. And that may take a few seconds. It may take a few minutes. But there will be a shift and you will feel better. Then, the next step is to ask yourself, how would I prefer to think about this? Or how would I prefer to be? What do I prefer? I know I didn't like that. What do I want? What do I want to embody? The image of myself that I'm creating in my mind, the image of myself as the successful person I am absolutely committed to being. How does he or she respond in this situation? What does he or she create that's different than what I've created in the past? What is the new me doing? Whether that's how you think or how you feel or how you behave. But the key here is to allow our mind to go there, to really start to explore. What does it look like? What does it feel like to be different? And you indulge in that feeling. You indulge in that visualization. You use your creative, constructive imagination to see and to feel yourself differently. Now, we could talk about this from the metaphysical perspective. We could talk about this from the neurological perspective, the psychological perspective. I'm not going to do any of that right here, right now. I want you to explore it from an experiential perspective. Most of us have so much knowledge about personal development, about marketing, about sales skills, about business growth. We could write books. We could host seminars. We have so much knowledge. And all of that is great, except if you don't implement it, it's practically useless. It's not going to change your life. There's a quote: "To know and not to do is not to know." And if you can remember that when we know something, it is subconscious, it is unconscious. Spelling your name is something you know how to do. Tying your shoe is something you know how to do. Not just intellectually, not just I can explain to someone else how to do it. You can actually do it. So, when you find yourself beating yourself up, feeling negative, on that roller coaster, this is not about making yourself wrong for having those feelings. The question becomes, what are you going to do about it? And I just laid out a process that you can begin to implement, not just once. Remember, whenever we want to learn a new skill, we practice that over and over and over again. Repetition is what creates the knowns in our subconscious mind. So use this process and use it frequently. And I'm not promising that you're never going to have negative thoughts or feelings again. To the contrary, I can pretty much guarantee that you will. However, you're going to begin to experience more self-empowerment, more self-control, a greater sense of self-discipline, self-respect. You're going to notice improvements if you're willing to do the inner work. Now, if you're not already a member of Business Mastery Academy, make sure you take advantage of your free month. Remember, it is incredibly affordable, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of resources available to you. You get your first month for free, $0. It is month to month. If you choose to stay in the academy, it is $97 a month. You have access to all of those incredible mindset reconditioning audios and videos that I briefly referenced earlier. You have access to business trainings that are provided by industry experts on topics from marketing and sales to PR to your financials, and it keeps growing. We have live weekly group coaching and mentoring calls. There is so much value there for you. Head over to acintel.us. acintel.us. Start your free trial today. And until next time, we'll see you in another Mentor Minutes.